Hello, 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 my sexies. We have an awesome guest on today, Rena Martine, and I'm so excited to have her. I met her on Instagram. She has really great Instagram videos, content, information, education, and it's very entertaining. So go check her out, and we will have her links in the bio. But she is a women's intimacy coach who helps women love their bodies, experience deep intimacy, and have great sex shame free. You know, I'm all about getting rid of that shame and judgment. So we're going to dive into today's subject. It's all about fantasies and role playing and how the fuck do you even talk about it? How do you open up? I know you're scared, but we're going to get into it. So go ahead, Reena, and introduce yourself.
Right. So a little bit about my background is before becoming a coach, I spent 14 years as a deputy district attorney with the Los Angeles County DA's office. And the majority of that time, I was prosecuting sex crimes, child abuse, and domestic violence cases. So I do have a long history of working with survivors of sexual trauma. Today, not all of my clients are survivors of sexual trauma, but what I see that my clients have in common is that something is coming in the way of intimacy, whether that be relationships, emotional vulnerability, or sex. And it's really a matter of diving in and figuring out what's going on and pulling it out from the root, rather than just giving people Cosmos 10 tips and tricks to satisfy your partner, right? But understanding where those blocks are coming from. Because I believe that great sex, love, and intimacy are our birthrights. And if you're missing out on that, you're missing out on one of life's greatest joys that is absolutely free. So I work with women one-on-one. I also educate on a variety of online platforms, and I'm doing some writing and speaking as well. So that's my universe right now.
Yes, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, she's going to be a TEDx speaker. So you definitely want to tune into this episode. We will talk about it later. All right. So how did you get into this line of work then, from going and seeing all that to wanting to help others? Like, was there like a trigger point or an event and you're just, tell me about it.
Sure. And I'll try to make a very long story as brief as possible, but about 10 years into prosecuting those kinds of cases, I got burnt out because there was only so much I could do. There was a lot of injustice I was seeing within the justice system. So and a decade is a long time for any prosecutor to handle those types of cases. So I transitioned to doing other types of non-sexual assault work within the DA's office. And at that same time, I was realizing in my own personal life that I had some sexual shame to work through. And I'm a survivor of both childhood and adolescent sexual assault. I'd worked through that in therapy. My sticking point was that I didn't want what everyone else wanted in terms of the white picket fence of monogamy and vanilla sex. And I had to work through my own shame regarding that because I felt like there was something wrong with me. You know, why can't I get this right? I'm married, my husband's great, you know, on paper we have this great life, and why am I just so unsatisfied? And so I started doing my own work. And when I say work, it was like having another full-time job, Tia.
Oh yeah. No, I had to do that too. Even though I was super sexually liberated, I had to do that work too. I had shame about wanting so many different things and wanting to try these things. And honestly, around like light BDSM, because society makes it be like it's something that you are traumatized. I know you went through trauma, but it's not always that. You don't have to be traumatized to want something. I just had to say that.
Absolutely. And there is this common misconception that if you do fantasize about BDSM, for example, that you either have some sort of psychological defect, I'll just use that term, or that you survived trauma. And in fact, that's not true. The research indicates there is no link whatsoever between trauma, between, mental health and what your kinks are.
Yeah, I
So
am one of those people that have not experienced a trauma, anything like that, or like being beaten or, whatever it is that I had to want that. And I had a lot of shame around that because I was like, what's wrong with me? Why do I want this? It turns me on. It turned me on to look at bondage. It turned me on to be tied up or like be like, like no. And just, I loved it. And it made me feel bad or wrong, even after watching 50 Shades of Grey, because they made it seem like the person, he only was like that because of this, where you guys, I haven't experienced. I'm one of those people, but I like it. I'm naturally masochistic, hence why I like pole dancing.
yeah, right. And which I can't do because I bruise way too easily. But
Yeah.
I'm really glad you touched on this. And I think we can talk about this a bit more, because for some people who are assault survivors,
Yeah.
BDSM can be a
Mm.
healing modality. I've actually
Mhm.
taught workshops about this very issue with a
Mm.
colleague of mine who has a PhD in trauma studies, who's a professor of trauma. And I can talk more about how I've seen this play out with my clients, but you don't have to have survived trauma in order to be attracted to BDSM.
Mhm.
That's been the situation with you, Tia, but that's also what the research supports. But if you are somebody who has survived trauma, you can use BDSM to what's called restage that trauma, create a
Mm.
new narrative around it, where
Yeah.
you are now the one in control. You're kind of in the director's chair, even if in the director's chair, you're saying, I want to be submissive,
Yeah.
which is different than actually being a survivor of abuse, because in that case, you didn't have a say. But
Yeah.
one of the most problematic fantasies that I get asked about whenever I teach, and from clients, they'll say, I can't believe I'm about to tell you this, but I have fantasies about being raped, for example.
Yeah. Ooh, let's get into that. This is
Okay.
actually really normal. Like, this is normal, especially
Yes.
for women.
And so I'll start off by saying they're not rape fantasies,
Yeah.
because the average woman is not, if you're walking down a dark alleyway at night, you're not actually fantasizing about a stranger coming out in that moment and assaulting you.
Yeah.
So we used to call them rape fantasies. Now we can call them ravishment fantasies, or
Yeah.
sensual non-consent.
Dominated,
Right.
ravished, taken by the moment. But yeah, it's like that rape fantasy but it's really not. We don't actually want to do it against our will. We do actually have control. Just like in BDSM, if it is in a very safe environment, you do actually have control. There's safe words. You can take it a little bit farther, but it actually is safe and you have control.
Absolutely. And so really it's a forced domination fantasy.
Mhm.
And 53% of women have had them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the majority of women here.
Mhm.
And that, what I've seen and the thousands of women I have spoken to about this topic, is that tends to be the most shameful,
Mm.
especially if you have survived an actual rape, right?
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with me?
It's like
Why would
hard
I?
for their brain to just like, oh wait, that's bad. Wait, ooh, but where does this come from then?
So it could be precisely because they're trying to heal from that rape that they want to do it differently this time, right?
Mhm.
So it's a matter of, okay, I want to reenact this, but in a scenario where I'm in control,
Mhm.
because that's actually how we start to heal from trauma and create new neural pathways, is
Mhm.
to rewrite, is to present new data. It's to present opposite action, which is, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to give some new evidence to my brain that this is pleasure rather than abuse.
Mhm.
So that could be somebody who suffered abuse as a child, who is interested in age play fantasies, where this time I'm actually the one taking ownership over this and I'm healing in that way. But for a lot of women, these forced domination fantasies, they just happen. We're scared of them. We try to push them away. But if we can understand that our fantasies are really just a sexual language for our emotional needs, we can start to dissect that. And for
Okay.
a lot of women who are fantasizing about being submissive, whether that's forced submission or more passive submission, it is because on a day-to-day basis, we are making more decisions than we've ever had to in the history of women on the
Ooh.
face of this earth.
And they just want to be submissive and I'm done. I don't want to keep doing. And also that's super masculine now. We really have to be going and doing and working and having kids. And we're just like literally our feminine natural essence is receiving, is getting, is being in that natural flow. And so we're just like, oh, can somebody just take control?
Exactly. We have a fantasy about surrender and
Yes.
relinquishing control. You don't know how many women I've heard from who are like, my husband, he's such a nice guy, but sometimes I wish he'd just slam me up against the wall and tell me what to do.
Yes.
Right.
Also, I think the rape fantasy, which I've also heard from like Sex with Emily,
Mhm.
is that it's very natural and it also comes from society and how women, especially, you know, in the 50s and in the 20s, were just, oh, we're supposed to be virgins until we're married and you're the person. And or even way back in the day, like they literally were supposed to be virgins until they were married. So all these things of how we were like, oh, like, but we want it. We had desires. Doesn't matter what year, what age, BC, like women have always had desires for sex. But then we weren't supposed to. It was wrong. It was bad. Women are like these like clean white goddesses, whatever it is. And then so even from a long time ago, we were like, oh, well, just take me because we did have desires. And I think it's passed down. And it's like, oh, but we want it, but like just it's kind of like that thing, like where just take me. I'm not doing it.
Well, and I think, you raise an interesting point, and we are sexually attracted to the taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And now when we as women have more rights, and I mean, obviously there's things going on in the world right now that are very, very troubling, but
Yes.
we've come pretty far.
Mm-hmm.
And it is increasingly taboo to think about and fantasize about somebody taking us.
Yeah.
But the fantasy itself is coming from this desire to feel irresistible, like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
person just cannot control themselves
Mm-hmm.
around me. But I was, not to get too far off track, but I was watching Gone with the Wind last
Yeah.
week, and there's a scene where um basically there's a spousal rape scene where Scarlett
Mm.
O'Hara is dragged up the stairs
Ooh.
and he's aggressive with her, and the next morning she wakes up with this big grin on her face, and he comes in and he had been drinking the night before, and he apologizes to her, for his actions, and she's almost disappointed about that.
Oh shit.
And I think that's telling of the time in which this movie was made
Yeah.
and cultural norms that of the time that this was depicting, the Civil War. But there's something that stirred in the female consciousness after 50 Shades of Grey, considering that sold more copies last decade than any other book. It was the number one selling book,
Yeah.
which is mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Something about deviant sex would be that commonly consumed. And so
Mm-hmm.
what is that telling us? That there's a huge fantasy about this. I mean, and the research shows 93% of women have fantasized about being sexually dominated. So why
Yeah.
aren't we talking about this more?
Well, I would say part of it is society, and you and I are both creators, and Instagram and even YouTube a little bit. Oh my goodness, they just literally try and shut it down. And I think that's
Mhm.
part of what's happening in the world right now. Not to get too off subject, but like just stuffing women back down. Like we're
Mhm.
like literally having this sexual revelation. Like we are. 3 years ago, I started Sexy Biz Babe. Nobody was talking about sexy or sex in business when I started it. And now like everybody's like sexy and lovey and like sex in business. I'm like, whoa. And now it's just trying to push it back down. I don't know. That's probably just a theory, but
Yeah, it's and so it was interesting. I was talking to my editor because I have a book coming out in about a year and a half from now.
Ooh.
The publishing process is a very long one, but she
Yeah.
was saying that what attracted her to my book proposal was that I don't silo BDSM and non-monogamy, because you can find a book just about BDSM or a book just about how to open up your relationship. But there are very few kind of just mainstream accessible books that will have a chapter about that or the other, because we're not incorporating these into our general discussion around relationships, sex, and intimacy. And so that's why I'm here, former respected prosecutor, talking about this. And I'm open about my own life too, because I feel that the best way to dissolve our shame is to hear from real women, and not to just throw around research and data, which I like to do so that women understand they're not alone, but to hear from somebody like you. Right. And so I appreciate you, Tia, opening up about that. Yeah, you had these fantasies, you were ashamed about them, and now you embrace them, because I'm in that camp too. And not everybody has the luxury of being able to get on a podcast or get on Instagram and talk about what they do behind closed doors. And I am grateful that I'm in a position where I can do that and do it for the greater good.
Yeah. So let's talk about communicating our fantasies, our desires, role play, things like that. I've worked with lots of women, and they're usually afraid to bring it up to their partner. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of being turned down. One of my clients even said she'd talked about it in the past, and her partner was just like, no, we can't do that. And so what are your tips on communicating desires and fantasies in the bedroom?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost is it's hard because some people will interpret, hey, I want to try something new, as everything you've been doing is wrong. Right. And we have to see this as, wouldn't it be fun if we tried? So it's this project you're doing together, rather than, complaining about your spouse's cooking. Say your spouse cooks, I don't know, pasta every night of the week. And you say, wouldn't it be fun if we tried to find a Japanese recipe and did that together? So, but how do you get on the same page? First thing, take the BDSM test and have your partner take it too, and discuss your results.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, you go to bdsmtest.org. I have seen so many people who are surprised, and then they ask their partners to take it, and such amazing things will come from that. Just seeing like, oh my gosh, well, you have a domination fantasy and I have a submission fantasy, or, oh, looks like we're both voyeurs. What can we do with that?
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of us don't know that there are words for this thing that we're starting to fantasize about.
And also, a really good thing to think about to start exploring and communicating desires and fantasies is it doesn't have to be done. You don't have to be asking for them to do anything. A big part of communication is honestly just sharing the fantasies and desires, and you don't have to execute it. And I think that is the best thing to start with is, hey, this is a fantasy or desire that I have. Maybe it's just, I like to visualize it. Maybe it's, I would like to do it, but let's just talk about it. And then taking off that expectation really helps people open up to talk about it.
For sure. And there are ways that you can explore fantasies. Like we'll talk about threesome fantasies. That's the number one most common fantasy. I think it's 90% of people have fantasized about multiple partner sex.
Yeah.
But not everyone wants to actually do it, because there's a lot that can go wrong. But a lot of things that can go right too. But for some people, it's, I don't want to throw a relationship in jeopardy by doing that. So if you can get down to the bottom of, okay, well, what is it about the threesome fantasy that turns you on?
Yeah.
Right. What is it about it? Is it that, you're the center of attention?
Mm,
Is it that you want to see your partner with another person? What is
yeah.
that? And then you can ask yourself, okay, are there ways that we can start meeting those needs without bringing in extra people?
Yeah.
Gradually build up to it. But, you know, 80% of people who have fantasies say that they actually want to act on them,
Okay.
but only half of people ever share those with fantasies
Mhm.
with their partner. And because of shame, because of fear. And it's unfortunate because those who share sexual fantasies with their partner report highest relationship satisfaction, highest sexual satisfaction, and fewest difficulties in sexual performance and functioning. So it's really good to talk about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's talk a little bit about that. So I felt shame and judgment around certain fantasies, but the more I even just share it with my partner, and my partner wasn't into BDSM. He's not. Tried it kind of a few times and he wasn't into it. Microphone just stopped working. 1 second. I think it's back on. That was weird. Okay. So my partner wasn't into BDSM, but he did enjoy listening to what kind of desires I had. And I did have a little bit of shame because he's not into it, but he did enjoy like the reason of why, or how we could explore me being dominated in other ways. Or he was even open to me getting a dom, but like we never actually did it, but we talked about it. And that really helped get rid of that judgment and the shame around my fear, and me to feel more open and free in the bedroom, and for us to be, I felt more safe because
yeah,
he did accept me. Doesn't mean he had to do it. And we still talked about it and we've explored other things, but that was just huge, just being able to talk about it.
right. And to know that you weren't going to discuss this person and have them running away
Mm-hmm.
when you shared this very deep, vulnerable desire of yours.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have any fantasies you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a DS relationship with my partner, where I'm submissive. We're not in a 24/7 DS relationship or
Yeah.
anything like that. But it's been it's been kind of the combination lock for me in my own sexuality. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have been sexually active for a long time. I've had long-term relationships and partners and this and that, but it wasn't until I leaned into BDSM and found somebody who was actually a lot more experienced with it than I was. I was definitely on the curious side of it,
Yeah.
but hadn't had much experience. But I knew from a theoretical perspective that I was interested, and just so happened to meet somebody who was like, well, that's my jam. And that's what I do. Right. And we've been together 3.5 years now. And I found that that was what I needed. Like, oh, okay, this makes sense now why
Yes.
this hasn't done it for me. I love being able to just be, to
Yeah.
surrender and be. And because for, again, a lot of us, we have a hard time getting out of our head, especially with
Yes.
sex. Oh, am I
Me
doing this
too.
right? No. And with being a submissive, really it's just about existing and just being.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love the caretaking component of it
Mm,
too. The
yeah.
nurturing, the aftercare.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into pain. I'm not a masochist when it comes to that.
Mm,
A little bit, but that's not my kink.
yeah.
And I think I'm here to dispel, because a lot of women might think, oh, I'm not into pain, so I can't be into BDSM. Ladies, you can absolutely be into
Yeah.
want to be a submissive without needing whips and chains and all these other
Yeah.
things.
So what kind of dom sub relationship do you guys kind of like
Yeah,
take
so
in?
we do a lot of bondage.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do tasks.
Mm,
So and those can range from sexual to non-sexual, but my fantasy is being a good girl.
yeah.
And
Oh,
whatever,
good girl. Yes. Good girl.
yeah.
Love it.
So there's a whole so many different kinds of dom sub relationships, and one is known as the daddy dom little girl, or
Yeah.
like good girl. And that's where I lean.
Uh-huh.
I can, when I am with women, I can lean more into my dominant side. So
Yeah.
I do have that dominant side
Same.
too,
Same.
right?
I switch. I'm
Uh-huh.
actually probably 99% of the time the more dominant woman with
Mhm.
women, even though this literally just happened. The woman was like, yeah, I'm usually the dominant. I was the dominant because I'm very, I don't know, it just comes out of me. So I love both. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I went out with a woman recently and she was like, well, I tend to be dominant with women. I was like, I tend to be dominant with women. Do you think that, I mean, is that gonna be a problem? She's like, we'll figure it out.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I can say we figured it out.
Oh yeah. The girl was very happy to be in her submissive. She was like, I usually happen to do it, but she would rather be in the submissive.
Uh-huh.
And it made me like want to be the more dominant. I was like, ooh, I'll do it.
Yay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice because 99% of the time I'm with my partner, my primary partner. And so when I am exploring that dominant side of me with women, it's like I also get a glimpse into the satisfaction he gets out of being
Yeah.
my dom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So how do people kind of get over that fear of talking of if they want a threesome, if they want to try BDSM, if they want to explore something? Any tips on that?
Yeah. So a few things you can do. One, first and foremost, know that your sexual fantasies are just filling an emotional need. So get curious. What's that emotional need I'm trying to have filled? If it is sexual submission, that emotional need could be, I just want to surrender, right?
Yep.
If it's a threesome, like I want to be the center of attention.
Yep.
So identify what the need is. And then there's a few ways you can go about doing that. One is you can take the BDSM test, have your partner take it, kind of compare results. Another could be, and this is presupposing that you have decent communication with your partner, because I think that's key.
Yeah.
And if you don't, ask yourself why you're in this relationship. But saying, let's find some porn that each of us like, that excites us for whatever reason.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, and then send it to each other.
Ooh, yes.
Right. And then you can go through like, okay, well, what is it about that excited me? And it doesn't have to be 100% on point, because you might say, all right, I like this part of it, but I don't like the pain part. Or
Yeah.
I like the threesome, but there were one too many. I don't want a sixsome. I just want a threesome. There were too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen. Another way you can do this is say, all right, we're going to talk about our sexual fantasies, and here's how this is going to go down. You're going to write yours down on a piece of paper. I'm going to do the same. We're going to put it in an envelope. And before we give each other the envelope, talk about how you're feeling in that moment. And so how I'm feeling could be,
I like that.
I'm scared to give this to you because I'm nervous you might judge me. I don't want you to think that this is me complaining about our sex life as it is right now. So
yeah,
without even talking about what's in the envelope, talk about your feelings around it, because that creates this beautiful opportunity to, one, be vulnerable, but two, to put your partner's mind at ease and say, whatever's in there, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so you each talk about your feelings and then say, all right, so do you want to open each other's envelopes? And so that's a way to go about doing it. If you want to take it even easier than that, there's an app called Spicer that you both can download. It sends you daily kind of, not dares, but would you ever do this? And then each of you votes either yes or no. And when you have a match, the app alerts you. So that's kind of an easy way of doing it too.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. And it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Or those little games, little like truth or dare games and stuff. I always see those.
Yeah.
Ooh, what I love about those options is it paints a picture. So a big thing when I've worked with clients is they share their desires and their partner is afraid of it because they're painting a whole different picture. So you say BDSM and they're thinking they're being gagged, choked, they're in pain. They're like, I don't know, if you look up BDSM without having specific keywords, it is a little like, whoa.
Yeah.
So they have this whole different visualization. Whereas also, if you paint the picture of what you really desire and how it goes and how they feel and then why, they're going to really understand it more and then maybe not be so overwhelmed. Because my
Exactly.
BDSM is also a little bit more light. It's not so just intense,
Right.
where you do see some crazy ones. And that can also be really fun to explore. And you can just get turned on by sharing your fantasy.
Exactly. Exactly. Because as you said, you can say BDSM and their imagination will go to the absolute extremes. Like,
Yep.
oh my God, she's going to wear latex and wants to be tied up. She wants to have the shit beat out of her. She wants to be choked, right? You know, all the things.
Yeah.
And really it could just be like, I want you to hold my hands down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or just like put little handcuffs on or put a blindfold on. Like literally it could just be like some little taboo things.
Right. I say for anyone who's a newbie to it, a sleep mask is your best friend. Like literally just start with a sleep mask. You try wearing the sleep mask and then let your partner try wearing it. That just having one element of sensory deprivation, that is a form of bondage because it's restricting some of your senses. Start there. You don't have to go out and spend a ton of money on gadgets and things. You can just start small.
Yes. Just start small. Just start. Share something.
Just
try
do
new
the
things.
thing. Yes.
Do the things.
And no one's going to say, why are you bringing this sleep mask into the bedroom? Right.
Yeah.
That's where it belongs.
And there's no shame about it. There's no shame.
Yeah.
I love that. So let me hear, before we kind of wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to share about fantasies, communication, things like that?
Well, that we can't control our fantasies. Okay. Yeah. And if we don't give them some sort of voice, then they can begin to control us and they become psychological preoccupations, which is no good for us. So we just have to make friends with them, not judge where they come from, because we don't know where our kinks come from, but make friends with our fantasies. Know that it is very rare for folks to not have fantasies. So if you have them, you're in the overwhelming majority of people. And if you want to know more about the science behind this, I cannot recommend this book enough. There's a book called Tell Me What You Want by Justin Lay Miller. He also has a great podcast called the Sex and Psychology Podcast. He's got a fantastic Instagram. He's a researcher with the Kinsey Institute. And he was pretty much the first person who went and dove into sexual fantasies, because he's like, we talk a lot about the doing, but we don't talk a lot about what we're thinking about while we're doing it. So yeah, just know that you're normal.
Yeah,
you're normal.
It's okay to have them. Doesn't mean anything wrong about you. Don't have to have shame about it.
Right. And I'll quote Dan Savage here because I absolutely love him. He says that role play is like cops and robbers for grownups. It's play. It's pretend. Yeah. Like this is pretend and it's fun. And a lot of times sex can become a chore for people. It can become an item on the to-do list, but see sex as an opportunity to escape from that to-do list. This is a break. This is a time to just have fun. To play,
to have fun, to retreat, to surrender.
Exactly. Exactly. So there isn't anything pathological about you. This is just, what kind of fun you want to have. Like some kids growing up, their way of pretending was, I'm going to be a Disney princess, right? And some are like, I'm going to be a pirate. I'm going to be this. It's the same with us as grownups. It's just the adult X-rated version of this. So don't judge it.
Yes, I love that. All right, go explore. That's your homework. Share your fantasies, do all the things. And to get more really great tips, what's your Instagram so they can find you?
Oh, okay. So it's got a few like underscores and dots and stuff in it. It's _ Reena, RENA _Martine, MARTINE _. And then my website is renamartine.com.
Awesome. And the links will be in the bio just in case you missed that. And okay, so you're going to be on TEDx Talk. What's your topic?
Well, it's going to be about sexual shame
Ooh,
and
yes.
going to be talking about sexual shame, giving that talk in September, and it'll take about 2 months before it lives on the interwebs. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so excited for you. And thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.